Hello, and welcome to Horror Mania Empire. I am Josh,
And I'm Jacob.
and today we will be ranking HHN 29 Scare Zones. This should be an interesting concept as we are coming up on hopefully some of the announcements coming out soon for HHN 30. So, Jacob, I want you to start out with your number 5.
My number 5 is Vikings Undead. This scare zone for me wasn't scary at all, and it was very crowded, so you could never really see much inside of it. Except that's, of course, just a Halloween Horror Nights problem, not just the scare zone problem. But I felt like the costumes weren't really scary. They weren't trying to hide, they were just out in the open. So I didn't really get scared by anything there.
Okay, interesting choice. So, my number 5 was Zombieland. This one hurt to put as my number 5, and Jacob can tell you, I just rearranged my Scare Zone ranking right before we recorded this. Um, the biggest thing with this one wasn't so much that it was just bad, it's the fact that the expectations were much higher than the results. For me, I was expecting a great reference and great atmosphere that felt like Zombieland, and I didn't get that. I don't know what you think, but I just didn't feel the atmosphere that I wanted to feel from Zombieland. There's a few things I really enjoyed, like the fact they actually had Bill Murray in the Scare Zone, which was
Yeah.
great. But other than Bill Murray, they had actors that were supposed to be Wichita, Little Rock, Columbus, Tallahassee. They didn't look anything like them. There's only like one Tallahassee that looked alike. It's almost sad to try and see them, and you're like, oh, is am I supposed to believe that? But I thought the worst part of the Scare Zone was the biggest disappointment in the Scare Zone, which was the stage show.
Yeah.
The stage show was not great. They set it up like seeing the stage before the event even started last year, and you're like, oh, Zombie Kill of the Week, this is gonna be so cool. It wasn't anything special. It was the same show over and over again, even if they had different characters up there with the clown. And the voiceovers are just terrible.
Yeah.
Whoever they got to try and pretend to be those voices, it didn't sound accurate. And in the end, I was very disappointed because I love Zombieland. It's one of my favorite horror movies, horror comedies, but it just wasn't there for me. So Jacob, what was your number 4?
My number 4 is Zombieland. And along with what you said, I think the thing that made this higher up on my list was just the fact that they had so many scare actors in that zone that when you were inside and walked through it, you were at least gonna get at least one scare.
All right.
So, and the best part was also the bathroom where they popped out.
Okay, yeah, I enjoyed the bathrooms, the little side part where they had the porta potties, and they towards not every night, but most of the nights towards the end of the event, they had someone hiding in the porta potties, switching between them in the back. So even if someone saw the scare, they'd pop out of the other one, or water would spray out of it. It was a fun gag, a fun effect, and crowds would always gather around it. So yeah, I agree with that idea with that one scare being okay. I just felt like the rest of the scare zone, I don't know, it just wasn't up to the tier of a Halloween Horror Nights atmosphere. It felt more like a neighborhood scare zone type thing.
Yeah.
That it could have just been better. Is that it for your number 4?
Yes.
My number 4 will be an arcade. For me, it came down to it's that no matter what's gonna be in that spot, it's doing its job. It's just supposed to be what the first thing you see in the park. It sets the tone for the park for that year, and they can't really do much between Shrek and
Yeah.
Despicable Me, but for what they had, it was a good feel. It had that over the top 80s feel that the event had in HHN 29.
And they did really good with hiding behind the arcade machines for
Yeah,
scares.
yeah. It kind of reminded me of the harvest from the year before, so it wasn't very special. Just kind of reminded me of what I've already seen from before that. But I was happy with what it was. It was just an entrance scare zone. It was just supposed to bring people in, opening scares. It's not much to work with, and the people in the scare zones definitely made the most out of it.
Yeah.
So
My
Jacob,
number three
yeah, go
is
ahead.
an arcade also. So the reason it's higher up on my list than yours is because of the costumes. It's it's pretty much reused costumes from like the Purge. They reminded me of that, but it's different. But the thing with that is the costumes looked so good that everyone was taking pictures with them.
Yeah, I could see that. I get your point with everyone taking the pictures with them, but based on what I've seen in the past, that's just because it's the first scare zone in the park. It is the picture zone. That's its job purely is to be the picture zone. So the second you walk into the park, you're like, oh, I gotta take pictures with these people, pictures with these people.
Yeah,
That's just what I feel like. That's their whole job. So they basically did their job, is what I'd
yeah.
say. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with your number three?
Uh, nope.
All right. Moving on to my number three. My number three was Vikings Undead. This one is a hard one to rank, as originally this was my last place. But reflecting on the year, I realized when it comes down to it, it was a scare zone. What I mean by that is it had the Halloween Horror Nights feel. It was an original, it met the type of feel of a Halloween Horror Nights scare zone. It made the most of its area. There was characters, there was backstory. It was a Halloween Horror Nights scare zone.
True.
And it was hard to rank these because, in my opinion, this was one of the weakest years for scare zones. It was the weakest year I've ever been to, at least. So, ranking these scare zones, I'm like still trying to compare it to what was in those scare zones the years before. It doesn't meet up to the standards of the years
Yeah,
before with the
and
whole massive church and the Cary, Ohio
yeah, that
feel.
that that spot usually has the best scare zones, but this year it it wasn't that good as the previous ones.
Yeah, it was more of a, this one was just, of this year, it was pretty much balanced between pros and cons. For me, it wasn't as scary as I'd hope, but it definitely had a great atmosphere and it felt like a Halloween Horror Nights scare zone. So that's my number three. Jacob, what is your number two?
My number two is Rob Zombie Hellbilly Deluxe. So for this scare zone, I was familiar with these songs beforehand, and while walking through it, it just brought all the characters in his music to life. And I think that was the main point of the scare zone was just to bring his characters to life at the event. So it did its job. Plus there was a lot of different characters per like every cast change, and um the stage shows, like the one with the electrifying chair thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The actor who was doing that did such a good job at making it look real. So that's also another reason. Um that's pretty much all I have for that.
All right. So my number two is Vanity Ball. Going into this event, this scare zone seemed the dumbest to me. And
Yeah.
even with the first few days, when you go like the first few weeks and it's not fully set up yet, it felt dumb. It felt dumb to me.
Mhm.
But as the actors really got into it and as it started growing a fan base, the zone started coming alive to me.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it was over the top, but it was so Halloween Horror Nights. It was very
Yeah.
Halloween Horror Nights feel. It was everything that Halloween Horror Nights is in the scare zone. They were over the top. There was still stage shows and it felt like you were in
That
Horror
the
Nights, and
stage
that's
shows is probably what brought that scare zone so much like fans is because of it was nonstop the stage shows. It could be like a 30-minute long competition thing, and it was always fun just to walk through and see new costumes throughout the event. Like they added random new ones at the end of the event that I never saw at the beginning of the event. They just kept changing them throughout the event. So it was something new to see every time you went.
oh yeah, I really enjoyed the concept of it too. It was just a fun concept for Scare Zone. Having it be like plastic surgery to like the extreme. It was very fun to go through, and generally it felt like it fit the rest of the park for the year. It was very, even the vibe of the area you could argue was kind of 80s
Yeah.
with the style of clothing and the feel, but that's my number 2. So Jacob, moving on to your number 1.
My number one is Vanity Ball. And I already said most of the reasons I liked this one, but um this was the one scare zone this year that every time we went and the houses were like long waits, we just would go straight there. Like the beginning of the event, we went straight there. Uh, and we like one time we stayed there for about an hour, just walking around and having fun. And that was just amazing for that. And the cast in that scare zone was so amazing. They were like there was a fun cast and then there was a cast that was like taking it serious and like actually trying to scare people, which I like when there's casts that are completely different like that because it gives you a different experience every time you go for different casts.
Anything else?
Like you said before, this scare zone at the beginning of the event was not good at all. I didn't understand it. We walked through it. It was like, okay, it's plastic surgery, but what is there to it? And as the event went on, it became clearer as to what the scare zone was, and it finally found its identity throughout the event.
All right. Anything else? You're good to go?
Yep.
All right. And my number 1 for HHN 29 Scare Zones is Rob Zombie Hellbilly Deluxe. For me, this scare zone was far better than every other scare zone this year. It felt on par with the scare zones of the past. That's what it was for me. It it was interactive. The actors in the scare zone, I'd argue, put in the most work out of anyone in this any scare zone. That's nothing to put down on other actors in the scare zones. They just went to the extent. It might just even be management that put them to do this, but everything they did in that scare zone was to the music. It was never just, oh, I have one cue and that's the end of it. No, they do like a whole entire interaction with the song on like one corner of the stage show or the other corner of the stage show. They just had so many things that they were doing, and it fit with the scare zone. It was a party slash Horror Nights atmosphere that was super interactive. There's so many photo spots in it, and they've made such great use of the space there. They've had people up high, down low, on stages, and then the props were amazing.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, with the whole like execution thing with the electricity and everything was very fun. Um, the Living Dead girl thing with
Yeah.
Dragula, that was another good one. It was just a great scare zone in my opinion. It was my favorite of the year. Any other remarks you want to add before we close out?
I'm just hoping that in the 30th year, the scare zones are better.
We'll see. Hopefully, we even get scare zones at this point. I'll be
Yeah.
happy to get scare zones, but um, for me, it's just gonna come down to I just want to see some pretty cool scare zones. We might even put out a video on our predictions for the scare zones for this year. What it given if we actually have them, or just even what our wish list of what we'd like to see this year.
Yep.
So this has been our second video on Horror Mania Empire. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give us a like, subscribe, share with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, share with your friends. We want to grow in the Horror Nights community. We may be young, but we have many awesome ideas and we'd love to hear yours as well. So this is Josh,
And I'm Jacob.
and stay scary, my friends. Goodbye.